All right, Bay, what's going on, man? I'm happy to have you today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here, my brother. I am so happy. We're gonna have some fun.
We are because I need to kick this off right because you just made a huge announcement today, and I'm going to let you tell everybody what it is. So I'm not stealing that part from you. So you let everybody know what that huge announcement is.
Woo! Oh boy. So I am involved in a major pro wrestling event May 3rd at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, formerly the ECW Arena. It's truly a day of nostalgia. We're bringing back the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance for one day only, and the TWA was the precursor to what evolved into what ECW was. The promoter of that was a man by the name of Joel Goodhart, who was my mentor and a true father figure, and now a amazing friend to me. Um, Joel was setting the wrestling world on fire when I got into the business, and I was training at his school, learning the business, um, learning so much. But Joel's um, Joel was putting on the biggest shows in the wrestling world from 1989 to 1992, 91, setting the world on fire. And his big, it's like his unicorn that he was trying to always get to work for him. And it came very close at one point, as this man was between companies, was Ric Flair.
Man.
And he actually, when people watch the trailers that we've been putting out, um, he actually did. He was promoting. He was the Philadelphia promoter for the NWA slash WCW at that time, late '80s, early '90s, and he um, he did a banquet and presentation to Ric Flair and presented him with a Wrestler of the Decade belt. And he's always just had this. It's like I said, a unicorn of
Hmm.
having Ric Flair work for him. So when we started putting this show together in May of 2024, the first thing I said to him is, "Are you booking Flair?" Because I know that's your end game here. And he was like, we gotta see financially what the prices are going to be, et cetera, et cetera.
Hmm.
And as we've been going through booking and putting everything together and um, lining things up, about 6 weeks ago, he said to me, "We need to book Flair." And I'm like, I've been waiting for this. He's like, "I think we need to do this to just put the show over the top in typical Joel Goodhart fashion, because he was known for booking overbooking shows, over budgeting shows, and just going over the top." So um, he started making the call, and he's been going back and forth, and we've had it confirmed for about 2.5 weeks now.
Mm.
And we made the official announcement 10 a.m. this morning that Ric Flair will be at Rasslecon May 3rd at the 2300 Arena.
Man, and it doesn't get much bigger than that, and it's a legendary arena, and Ric Flair is one of, if not the most legendary wrestler of all time.
Absolutely.
And this is going down May 3rd. And I believe too you have one of Flair's old valets, Baby Doll, coming, right? Is that true?
Baby doll will be in the house. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. We have there's a nice mixture of some of the classic NWA people, Baby Doll, Missy Hyatt,
Hmm.
um, the Raging Bull, Manny Fernandez, the Rock and Roll Express.
Hmm.
We have a nice mixture naturally of ECW people,
Yeah.
and we have the true foundation of the Tri-State Wrestling Alliance slash ECW. A lot of the original true there, which I've been calling them now the TWA originals,
Hmm.
and a good portion of those were also ECW, true ECW originals, Eastern
Hmm.
Championship Wrestling originals.
That's
So
incredible.
Yeah,
And
it's going to be it's going to be a magical day. It's going to be a very emotional day. We actually got together back in October at Joel's house up in Philly, and it was the first time in 30 years that a lot of us have seen each other.
oh wow.
Yeah, and we hung out for the day. There's actually a documentary being done about all of this,
Mm.
and there was a lot of tears shed that day. And another thing that the thing that really kickstarted this whole thing was my big mouth and this a glass of wine. Um, I was doing an interview like this on a wrestling podcast early in 2024, and they knew my background from the TWA, and they started asking me questions about the TWA. And for some reason, I don't know what sparked it, but something was in my head about, if you've ever been to the 2300 Arena, they have banners
Mhm.
um, paying tribute to a lot of the old ECW guys, and some other local independent people that have had the honor of working in that building. And I just went on a tirade. I kind of went off, and I kind of snapped, and I was just like, they need to put a banner up there and pay respect to, in my opinion, the five guys that laid the foundation and groundwork of what's known as hardcore wrestling,
Mhm.
and really put it on the map, especially Philadelphia on the map, which I feel is like the capital of wrestling in the country in the
Mhm.
last 30 years.
Mhm.
And their names are Johnny Hotbody, Tony the Hitman Stetson, which the two of them had a 2 year long bloodbath feud that was just insane. And then there was two other guys, Mad Dog DC Drake and Larry Winters, who was actually Larry Winters, Hotbody, and Stetson were three of my teachers,
Mhm.
and Joel Goodhart was the promoter.
Mhm.
And Winters and Mad Dog, they had a feud similar to Hotbody and Stetson for a couple years, and they were throwing themselves off balconies before New Jack was jumping off of them. So there's just, people don't know the stuff that went on in that span of 1988 to 91 that really laid the foundation and groundwork to what. And the funny thing is, there was a man that was on probably a half dozen of those shows by the name of Mr. Paul E. Dangerously. So he knew, the foundation of hardcore wrestling. He knew what Philly was about, and he knew what exactly he was going to do when he took over the book.
Well, since we talked about the transformation into ECW a couple times, I do want to plug another one of your guests that I'm super excited about. Is Super Crazy, who I've stood across the ring from and had a fantastic match
Really
with. Yeah, absolutely. And
awesome.
I had a fantastic match with him, and I love the guy, and I'm super excited to see him there. And I guess now the segue that I wanted to talk about with you is that how you ended up um, as Chubby Dudley? Is TWA gradually turns into ECW, and you were one of the originals that just stuck it out? Is that what happened?
Actually, so I was in, now, you being a worker, and you run a wrestling school as well, correct?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay. You, on average, how long does it take a wrestling student of yours from day one till they get their first match? On average.
On average, we'll just call it about a year.
Okay. That's
Hmm.
way longer than what it was when I started. It was about
Hmm.
3, 4 months.
Yeah, I've heard that from a lot of old school guys. I'd say our soonest that we get students having matched on shows 6 to 7 months.
Okay.
Mhm.
2.5 years I was in wrestling school.
Really?
And the whole reason why, I couldn't do the front flip bump.
Okay.
I just could not do it.
Yeah.
If you put me in a suplex, take me over, I'll go. Give
Yeah.
me a hip toss, I'll go. Uh, Headlock takeover, I'll go. As long
Hmm.
as you're there, I
Hmm.
will go. If nobody's there, I won't go. So they would literally, I can't tell you how many hours they would make me try to flip without nobody there
Hmm.
for 2.5 years. And they
Wow.
would not give me a match until I could do it. Finally, like I was ready to quit. I called Goodhart up. I said, look, you know what? After like 2 years, I'm like, I'm done. I'm over this. Like, he's like, no, you're not fucking quitting. Come to the wrestling school on this day. I have a surprise for you.
Mhm.
I'm sitting in the school. The door opens. He comes walking in with Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. I'm like,
Wow.
okay. He's like, get in the ring, boy. Get in the ring with Orndorff. We lock up, go through a couple reversals. Boom, he hip tosses me. I take the bump. I'm looking up at him. He goes, you know what your problem is, boy? You're too fat. And he walked out of the ring. And I'm like, okay. Like, what happens now? Meanwhile, while that was going on, Nature Boy Buddy Landell had come in.
Mm.
Buddy gets in the ring. He's like, fuck that guy. He's like, don't listen to him. Buddy locks up with me, works like a 5 minute match with me.
Mhm.
Buddy turned to Joel and said, give this kid a match. He can work. Give him a fucking match.
Wow.
And Joel was like, all right. So he booked our match for it's supposed to be February of 92.
Mhm.
Joel was planning he used to do these four big, they were like kind of like would be pay per view events. They were so big. He would do these four big events a year, and he would draw between 2 to 3,000 people at these events. The main event was supposed to be Nature Boy Buddy Landell, who was his champion,
Yeah.
against Nature Boy Buddy Rogers.
Oh, wow.
That was going to be the main event. Week before that show, his ticket sales just were not there.
Hmm.
He was about to lose his shirt. He was about to lose everything. And his wife at the time was about to give birth.
Oh, wow.
So he was like, I gotta pull the plug. He used to do a weekly radio show. He went on his radio show that Saturday morning, a week before the show, said, that's it. I'm done. I close up. Didn't tell nobody. Nobody knew.
Mhm.
Closed up shop, canceled everything, turned off his phone, and didn't talk to nobody for 18 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah.
Wow.
So fast forward. So I don't get to do that match. Um, I was friends with a lot of the boys and all. Todd, who was one of the backers for TWA,
Mhm.
gets talked into becoming the main guy, restarting. They restart as now Eastern Championship Wrestling.
Mhm.
And Jimmy Janetti, who was one of the guys, he got me my tryout. I was in a tag team called the Hell Riders.
Mhm.
So it was me and my partner in our tryout match against Steve Richards and a guy under a hood. And we did tryout match, made the grade, and we worked for Eastern Championship Wrestling for about a year. And that's
Mhm.
how I got in as that. And then Eddie Gilbert became the booker once we got TV.
Mhm.
Worked a couple TV tapings and was let go. You know, Eddie just cleaned house. And a year and a half, 2 years later, the Dudleys had started.
Mhm.
And at the time, that's when Steve Richards had just gone back under Raven. And I had seen the Dudleys on TV. I was like, oh my God, I look like these freaking Dudleys. And next thing I know, a few days later, Richards calls me up. He's like, hey, we got this new gimmick, the Dudleys, that, I put a word in. I think you would be perfect for. Do you want to see if they'll take you? You want to come meet Paul? I'm like, fucking right. And went down, and I was in the hotel lobby waiting to meet Paul with Richards, and me and Richards were
Mhm.
talking, and Paul comes walking up and he goes, oh my God, another fucking Dudley. And Richards is like, this is the guy I was telling you about. So he said to me, he goes, do you have a tie-dye shirt? I said, no. He's like, get a tie-dye. He's like, what do you want your gimmick to be? And I always wanted to do like gorgeous Jimmy Garvin gimmick. I wanted to be beautiful Bay. So
Mhm.
I was like fluffing my hair up. I'm like, Studley Dudley. He's like, yeah, not going to work. You're Chubby Dudley. Buy food, buy a tie-dye. See you next weekend. And that's how it started.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. So now, how long did you, work as one of the Dudleys?
About a year and a half.
And what would you say, out of that year and a half was one of your personal favorite moments that you had as being Chubby Dudley?
You know what? Anytime, we were doing anything in that ECW arena, it was the magic of that building. Trying to describe it can't even do it justice because it was the original ECW arena in its original information.
Hmm.
Like now they've redone it, they cleaned it up. It's like the Taj Mahal now. It's a
Hmm.
true event center. Back then, it was a shithole. It was an absolute shithole that was like basically like a warehouse. It was just a concrete building with non-working toilets
Hmm.
that they would shoebox. I think the limit was supposed to be like 900. They would put like 12, 13, 1,400 people in this building.
Hmm.
And they were like over the guardrails. You would see on those, if you watch them old TV shows, they're just
Yeah.
hanging over the. I mean, there's just no room for anybody, and we would fight through those crowds, and it was just so much fun. And the crowds just, I mean, it was between the locker room and the fans. It was just one giant family. It really was.
Hmm. And ECW caught on like wildfire in select places before it
Hmm.
really blew up. And one of those select places was Buffalo. So we were very aware of ECW in Buffalo because it was for whatever reason it just caught here quick. And you guys would come to the Burt Flickinger Center here in Buffalo and do shows there. So in that year and a half, how does Chubby Dudley come to an end?
I quit. I stopped showing up. I
Okay.
So what happened was, it's weird because after that initial conversation with Paul, we never like really sat and talked about what is the direction of my character and what am I doing. It
Okay.
was it was always like I didn't know this too. Like when he told me to come next week, I started as well as the same night as Dances with Dudley. So the two of us
Mm.
started, and our first night was a Friday night, and then I think the next night was the arena. But on Friday, we were like in a small little dinner theater, and we worked the Steiners.
Hmm.
And I remember I was like, "Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit!" Like I was like, "Am I actually going to be in the ring working the fucking Steiners?" And they had me on the outside. They had
Hmm.
Dances with Dudley and Dudley, who was the main worker of the group at that point.
Hmm.
They worked, and I was like, I'm on the outside. I'm like, all right. So they ended up just keeping me on the outside, and if there was like an opening match spot, they needed like somebody real quick to fill in, like Chubby, here, go out and do this, and that only happened like a couple times.
Uh-huh.
So I never really got to work a
Mm.
true match as a Dudley with the Dudleys.
Gotcha.
So I was always just part of the sideshow,
Mhm.
and it was I couldn't complain because I'm on TV almost every week.
Mhm.
I'm in magazines. I'm living the rock star life back at the hotels afterwards between the partying and the groupies. I was just having the time of my life. Like there was like, okay, why rock the boat?
Mhm.
But then, like I started getting frustrated because all right, here comes Bubba,
Mhm.
and Bubba was really really green when he came in, and I was like, well, that's kind of weird because I can work better than him.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh. And then came Devon, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, all right, well, it just happened again. Like,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
so I'm starting to see the writing on the wall. And then Spike came in,
Mhm.
towards the. I ended up leaving a month later, but that was the final straw. So
Mhm.
Spike comes in, and then talking with him, nothing against Matt, nice guy, but
Uh-huh.
it like kind of like hurt me and pissed me off because when I'm talking to him, I was like, oh, I was like, well, where are you from? He's like, oh, California. I'm like, California?
Uh-huh.
I fucking live 15 minutes away from the arena, and they're flying this motherfucker in and putting him in a hotel, and
Yeah.
I'm down the road. So I was like, all right. So I hung out for about another month, And
Mhm.
then I was just like, you know what? I'm fucking going every week. I'm getting bashed by chairs. I'm getting concussions, everything else. I'm like, is it really worth it? And I was like, starting to, there was like going through my head. I was like, I want to cut my hair off. I want to
Mhm.
try to like grow up and be mature and start my life, and I think I'm going to get married. And like I was going through like this whole turmoil of stuff in my own head. And I was living with my sister at the time, and she was going through insanity in her life. It was just turmoil everywhere, and I was just
Mhm.
like, I need to just walk away and figure my life out. And that's what I did.
Okay. So, you did mention that when Bubba came in, he was super green when
Hmm.
and you were already there. So fast forward and you see the first ever TLC. What's running through your head when you see the Dudley boys out there and doing that thing in WWE?
I'll even say, even before that, as soon as they um as I watched their progression through ECW,
Hmm.
then I was like, oh, now I see the upside for Bubba and Devon was, even Spike was so much greater than what I could have ended up pulling off.
Yeah.
So, and there's, I haven't talked to Bubba yet, but I've talked to Devon over the years
Hmm.
and explained my feelings, and we've talked, and everything's cool. Um, but was always a huge supporter of those guys and absolutely ecstatic for all they done. And when I saw that TLC match, I was absolutely blown the fuck away. And I couldn't be happier for them. And I'll go back and watch that, and I'll show that match to people like a proud little brother or big brother to those guys, because that's one of those matches. It's like the Mick Foley Undertaker Hell in a Cell, that's just
Mhm.
like so unbelievable that it really you can't, your words can't do it justice to really explain how amazing those matches were.
And aside from just the Dudleys, and which the Dudley thing was huge. Obviously, as you mentioned, it was like the Dudley family. Like I remember Sign Guy Dudley and Big Dick
Hmm.
Dudley and all that stuff, which was amazing. And then ECW grows and it gets a deal on TNN, and like you had to be just so proud of everybody that was still there from your days there in those moments because they were like the ultimate underdog, and all of a sudden there's success.
I'll tell you what, when I left in mid '96, I guess it was,
Hmm.
and I stopped watching for, because I was in my bitter mode, as most people get in pro wrestling. So I was
Yeah.
I was I was bitter, and I was not watching. And then when they got the pay per view,
Hmm.
I was like, "Fuck, they did it! They really fucking did it!" And a friend of mine had a watch party for the pay per view and
Hmm.
invited me, so I went and watched, and I actually sat and cried for them. I was so happy that they pulled it off, because you know even when I was there in '95 and '96, and Paul would give his locker room speeches,
Hmm.
he was bringing it up then. That was the goal. Pay per view, pay per view,
Gotcha.
pay per view. We're going to get, that's going to bring us to the next level. We're going to get the pay per view. And, that motherfucker pulled it off.
Paul is a crazy genius, man. He's a crazy genius. And speaking of Paul, obviously he's still doing his thing today with WWE, which is something I also wanted to segue into since we're just talking wrestling in general. Is WWE being on Netflix. What do you feel about the current state of wrestling today? WWE on Netflix, AEW, whatever, just in general. Like, what are you thinking when you're seeing all these things?
First off, it's mind blowing to me how truly popular pro wrestling is today. And I truly feel, I've been saying this a lot the last few months, as we're seeing WWE going to Netflix. Um, Now they're going to start, they brought back Saturday night's main event. They're going to be doing, I think, 2 nights now for SummerSlam. They already do it for WrestleMania, and I think 2 nights for maybe another pay-per-view, I forget. But
Hmm.
I started saying last year at WrestleMania, I feel WrestleMania and WWE is bigger than the NFL.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think it's way more mainstream what they're doing.
Yep.
And you have your AEW and TNA and NWA and all these other federations. I feel the gap between the number two company of AEW and WWE is light years.
Hmm.
Light years. I mean, I don't watch AEW, but the couple minutes I've seen here and there, every aspect I see of the quality from top to bottom of AEW to WWE is a light years of difference.
Hmm. No, and again, that's not, I'm not shitting on AEW when I say this, but
Mm-mm.
yeah, WWE is just a juggernaut, and it's hard to catch up with that when they've been going at it for 50 years or more, and I will say this though is when you watch WWE, AEW, whatever, there's guys that passed through ECW on their way up that are still out there killing it. Rey Mysterio, Chris Jericho, Mick Foley was there in the earliest years of
Mm-hmm.
ECW, and it's got to feel good to know that you hold a spot in the legacy of Extreme Championship Wrestling and Eastern Championship Wrestling.
When I was, when that was happening, um, especially the extreme point, um, those arena shows, they would have a monitor set up because that was our TV tapings, and the monitor would be set up in the back, and then we'd all be gathered around watching as, um, to see what was going on outside the ring. And I can't tell you how many times I was sitting there watching that, and I'm saying to myself, I'm part of wrestling history.
Yeah, and again, and you still are, and now you're about to make history again with this show coming up May 3rd, because I mean Ric Flair, Missy Hyatt, like just those two names alone, and then you got the Rock and Roll Express, and it's just it's wild what you guys are putting together.
It's this show, first off, just means so much to me personally because TWA was my starting point, and now it's truly coming full circle and is going to be the true ending point, um, where I've helped put the show together. I've been given the blessing to be the booker for the show,
Hmm.
um, which is the biggest honor and the biggest thing I've ever been given responsibility to. Um, I just can't wait for people to see the stuff that we're going to make happen that night.
Hmm.
It's going to be it's going to be a fun freaking show.
Well, word is spreading because I know I was talking to another ECW original a couple nights ago, HC Loke, and he knows about it, and he was very excited for what you guys are doing. And I told him I was going down there and gonna check it out and all that stuff, and he was just pumped up, and he wants to hear all about it. And now I want to segue just slightly, but still keep it in the wrestling realm, because you're a huge music guy, just like me.
Hmm.
You're a hair metal guy. Is that what you would use to like get pumped up before you went out on television? Did you listen to like music, or what was your routine?
You know what? No, believe it or not, no. Like when I was actually working matches, no, I didn't really listen to anything backstage or because a lot of times I was always wrapped up in something, especially like early on. I was just nervous because I was green. I was the new kid on the block,
Hmm.
and then um, I got put into another situation in Delaware where it was a weird situation where I worked for Jim Kettner and the ECWA, where I was brought in after I was let go by ECW. I was brought in
Hmm.
by Jim to be their monster heel in a singles. So now I'm going from tag team to singles,
Hmm.
but he ran his federation where all his guys, he trained them all. I was at that time the only true indie worker outsider, and
Mm.
everybody worked by using a script.
Oh, okay.
He literally scripted out every one of his matches and would give them to the workers, and they would get together at his house for a week or two before the show and run through it a few times.
Hmm.
And it was kind of weird because I'm like, I have a script now. and now I have to like follow a script, and it was just a weird situation. And
Yeah.
then I got the opportunity to go back to ECW, so I had to leave there,
Hmm.
and then I'm in this thing on TV and just in awe of you know
Hmm.
the Steiners and Woman, Missy Hyatt, Mick Foley, Steve
Hmm.
Austin. I got all these people around me who I looked up to and were major influences, and now I'm sharing a locker room with them. It
Yeah.
was really weird.
Oh, that's incredible though. And it's funny that you're talking about the script because I just recently finished the show Heels, and
Oh,
I,
okay. How
I
is
don't
it?
know, I honestly thoroughly enjoyed it, but
Okay.
the thing that I didn't get is I was like, man, like they keep saying that these wrestlers get scripts. I never got a script, so now like to hear you say that you actually did, I'm like, okay, so they're on to something that I just don't know about because I've personally never, and I've been doing this for 14 years, and I've worked with guys that Tommy Dreamer and Super
Yeah,
Crazy and stuff like, and I've never seen that before. So I was like, that's the only thing I don't like. So it's funny that you just said that you've done that.
dude, it was so weird because it was it was it was weird doing that, but then the problem would be with those guys if they got lost in the match, they didn't know how to cover it up.
Hmm.
They when they lost their place, it was like they were screwed. So
I can
yeah,
imagine that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So, staying on the May 3rd thing. Now, you said you're booking it. You got the blessing to do so. Beyond May 3rd, are you already thinking about doing more events, or are
No,
you just no, just focus just
I
on the one?
I can't wait for May 4th. I I can't. That's all I keep telling everybody. I can't wait for May 4th. It's been fun. It's been exciting. It's if it was just like booking it,
Hmm.
okay, but helping in every other aspect of
Yeah.
the convention. Like last night, I was having a Zoom call, the first Zoom call about um, organizing the convention,
Hmm.
and I hopped off the Zoom and I had a booking meeting with one of the matches, and then I
Hmm.
hopped back on the Zoom. And yeah, it's just the next 4 months is going to be insane.
Well, I do want to make that clear to everybody listening too. Is it's not just the show that's happening in the evening. The WrestleCon is happening during the day, so you get your chance at the meet and greet with everybody, and then you're moving on to see the show later the same night. So it's a twofer. You got two things going on that day.
There's going to be yeah, and the show is going to be there's 8 matches. It's going to be a roller coaster of emotions from the time the lights go down. We have the God Bless America being sung in the beginning to the very end. There's going to be a roller coaster of emotions. I advise you to bring a box of puffs because there'll be many tears shed a couple times that night.
I love it. And I'm looking forward to seeing everything that goes on. But here's a little fun question for you before we start to wrap this up: is if I asked you who your personal Mount Rushmore is in professional wrestling, what do you
Oh,
got?
don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that.
You got to try.
I got to go Flair.
Okay.
Flair, Mick Foley, Adrian Adonis.
Mm.
I'm, yeah, I'll say Austin
All right, that's fair.
because I was a huge fan of Austin from day one of his career because I was going through wrestling school as he was just coming out, and
Mm.
I was seeing the rise of this guy coming out of wrestling school and feuding with his teacher
Hmm.
in all the magazines every month, and I was blown away. And then he brought out Chris Adams' ex-wife, and I was like, this is freaking mind-blowing shit.
Yeah.
So like, and then when he went to WCW, and then he became part of the Dangerous Alliance,
Hmm.
the Hollywood Blondes, everything he did. Then he came to ECW. Everything he did was awesome. Except for what was he called when he first went in the Vince? The
The
Ringmaster?
ringmaster, yeah.
Yeah. That was I was like, oh, this is not going to be good. And then
Yeah.
it turned around and Stone Cold came to life, and that was just a complete game changer.
I 100% agree. And speaking of game changers, here's one last ECW segue for you. Is when Shane Douglas threw down the Eastern Championship Wrestling
Ooh.
and turned everything into Extreme Championship Wrestling. Did you know that that was going to be like the movement? Like things were going to heavily shift. Do you remember that?
When it happened, what I feel is also part of the reason why I don't think Paul ever really truly let me work. I was good friends with Dennis Carluzzo from the NWA, and I remember Dennis calling me that night. He would call me all hours of the night, and he called me, "Hey man, they fucked me, man. They totally fucked me over. They embarrassed me, man. They threw down the belt." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "They totally fucked me, man." And then when I saw it, I was like, "Oh, they totally fucked them. Like they totally fucked them." But even still, like I'm a very I don't know if it's my age or whatever, but I'm a very emotional guy, and even like when I watch it today, like I get tears in my eyes because it
Mhm,
is such a monumental moment in the shift to professional wrestling,
mhm.
and it needed done. The NWA deserved that at that point. Um, I love that Billy Corgan's trying to redo it and bring it back. More
Yeah.
power to him. I hope he's successful. But at that stage of the game, I used to tell Dennis, drop it. The fucking NWA is dead. It's not what it was 10 years ago. Let it
Mhm,
die peacefully.
mhm.
Um, so I was happy with what they did.
All right. Very cool.
And come on, that's one of the best promos ever in professional wrestling by Shane.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. And Shane's such a cool dude and a pleasure to have in every
Hmm.
locker room, and that was just such a cool thing. Um, and I before I get you out of here, I want you to plug the show one more time and let everybody know, times where they can get tickets, and of course plug your social media and your show.
All right. May 3rd. It's going to be a whole day thing, so get ready for it all. Um, During the day from noon to 3:30, we have Rasslecon, where we have a cavalcade of stars. There's still more to be announced. We have vendors that are bringing people in as well. I think there's going to be like so far 40 something people we have announced, maybe more.
Mm,
Um, and then the doors will close at 3:30, and then they will reopen at 6:30. Bell time is 7:30 for one and done. And then we have, you know what? We just put together a landing site website. Let me see.
mm,
You can go to 2300arena.com for tickets for both. And I think it's twawrestling.com is where all the information is for everything. There should also be, we have a hotel we're partnered with
mm.
where people can get cheap rate on the hotel. Get rooms quick. We have a limited block that I think it might be close to sold out. We're gonna have to expand it.
Mm.
Um, yeah,
Excellent. Well, thank you again for being here,
and
man.
for me, Facebook, YouTube at Chubby Dudley Official.
Love it. I appreciate you being here. This was fun, man.
You too, Robbie. Thanks for doing this, man.
Absolutely. And I will see you there.
I love it.